Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I don't want to talk about a specific book that I read, but rather, because it is the end of the month, I want to talk about the stuff that I read in November and what I plan to read in December. It is another wrap-up and TBR video. So, in November, I read quite a few books. Probably more than usual, but unfortunately, many of those did not live up to my expectations. I felt it was a kind of a boring month, but there were some shining gems, which is always nice. And as for December, I have a couple of books lined up, including one that I think is there just to intentionally make me angry or irrational as a joke to myself. But what can you do about it when you plan hijinks on yourself like that? In addition to all the books I have planned for December, I'm also going to make my usual top 10 dopest books I read of the year. They don't have to necessarily be made in 2022 to count as the best books of the year, at least in my opinion. But be on the lookout for that list coming around mid-December. Hopefully, I don't have a similar thing that happened last year where I read Dune right at the end of the year after I had made the list. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. truly a high quality book. But unfortunately, because I split it between 2021 and 2022, I don't know which list it belongs on, so I'm not going to put it on 2022's list. But it was a high quality book. And in addition to that, I also have some books to look forward to for 2023. I'll make a video on that. Always fun to talk about what to look forward to in the future. If you have any recommendations, let me know. I want to have a pretty high quality literary 2023. So without further ado, let's talk about the wrap-up and TBR. I'll do the wrap-up first, of course, followed by the TBR, and we will move on from there. So what did I read in November? Well, in terms of books, one of the books that I read was Stardust by Neil Gaiman, a high-quality book. It was a lot of fun, and maybe in another month, it might have been the best of the month, but unfortunately, it had some fair competition to deal with, but I can say that it's definitely worth checking out. Neil Gaiman is a high quality author, always doing work and building up on mythology and talking about fairies and magic and elements like that. So it was a pretty quality read, and I can't wait to read more Neil Gaiman as per usual. I also read Matilda by Roald Dahl, which I thought was pretty good. I didn't like it nearly as much as I enjoyed the movie, but it was still a little bit of fun, what with the magic that Matilda has and how she's able to outsmart her parents, a common theme in Roald Dahl literature. An interesting thing that happened was that over the weekend, the Thanksgiving weekend, I had actually gone to the movie theater to see Glass Onion, high quality movie. Can't recommend it enough. I should probably start making videos on my movie reviews, maybe or not. I don't think people should listen to me about movies. But while I was there, I saw like a preview for the upcoming Matilda remake or TV show that is coming out, I think on Hulu. It might be a musical of sorts, but it does seem to be sticking more true to the book than the Danny DeVito movie did. But even though that movie didn't stick true to the book, it was still high quality. But I'm interested in seeing how this one fares based on what I've seen so far. I also read Swamp Thing Volume 3 by Alan Moore. This was part of the booktube challenge that I have with Lucas over at the Bits of Lit. He is, we're reading the Swamp Thing series, Alan Moore's version, all 6 volumes, and we just finished Volume 3, and it was pretty good. I really like the social commentary that Alan Moore does, as well as continuing to explore identity and who Swamp Thing really is. Plus the art is absolutely fantastic, especially the close-ups of Swamp Thing's face. I definitely say it's worth pursuing this series. And again, this was probably the best of the month in terms of what I had to read. I also read Batman Snow, which was a Batman story about Mr. Freeze, sort of like his origins. I thought it was an interesting origin story, but overall a weak story in terms of what was presented. One of my issues with it is that Batman personally seeks out civilians to help him in his cause. And I know that's meant to be Batman is learning type of thing, but at the same time, him using civilians goes to show that he's just an unstable lunatic at times, just trying to recruit people and putting people in danger. And then he goes on a guilt trip, and I think he's kind of addicted to that guilt trip. Like, he wants to feel bad. He needs to feel bad, because if he feels good about being Batman, that defeats the cause or something like that. He has to be a constant martyr, and he makes himself that martyr, or something like that. At least that's what the comic presents him as. And so I don't think it's really worth seeking out at all. And then related to that, I also read That Salty Air, which was another graphic novel. Thought it was fine. Certainly had some fascinating art, but the story left a lot to be desired. It could have been explored in more detail, and it felt like the author just left it at a certain point and didn't want to continue it. So I felt like more could have been done there. I also read Split Tooth, which I thought was a challenging read for me. That was by Tanya Tagaq. A fascinating kind of book that explored Inuit culture and a girl's like sort of coming of age story in Nunavut in Canada, in a place that has for so long been exploited by the Canadian people. And I thought it was fairly interesting, kind of like semi-biographical for Tanya Tagaq. But there were a lot of elements that I didn't quite understand either, because maybe I'm not a woman, or I'm not within that culture. So it was hard to parse at times, but it's still worth seeking out. She has an interesting writing style that flows and feels like poetry, because she is a poet-songwriter type. So perhaps it is worth checking out. And then I also read a book called Second Place by an author whose name I don't recall anymore, which is fine because it was pretty bad. It was mostly about a wealthy woman and her husband bringing in an artist who ruins their lives, and it really felt like a wealthy elite person complaining about their life and not doing anything to make it better. It's like, boo-hoo, I have all this money, but I can't improve my own life. And I really hate stories that feel like that, because like, if you hate your life and you have the money to change things, why don't you do that? Like, stop staying in this place. I can't feel sorry for you if you have the money to change things and yet all you want to do is complain. Elon Musk. I also read When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner, which I thought was informative. It was really like a self-help book about exploring Judaism and Judaism's place in suffering and reflecting on, when bad things happen in the world. Pretty interesting book. That was recommended to me by my friend Bevan. She still doesn't have a booktube channel, but we share book recommendations on a Google Drive list. So trying to make my way through that. And then I also read Alias Madame Doubtfire by Anne Fine, which I thought was a very odd book. Like, the movie itself is unusual, but the book is somehow worse, because whereas the movie kind of cleans up Daniel to be, a good person at heart, possibly because he is played by Robin Williams, the book just straight up makes Daniel feel like an abuser of sorts. Like, he manhandles his children and yells at his wife in front of his kids, and it seems like the book makes me want to feel like Fine is trying to make me feel sorry that Daniel isn't allowed to see his kids, or that his wife is kind of being a jerk to him. But it seems like everyone has good cause to hate Daniel. So it was really hard to be sympathetic towards this character. And because of that, like, it felt like it was also trying to be funny, but sometimes this wasn't really funny. It felt scary that people like this actually exist. So I don't know what Anne Fine was truly going for, but I don't think it works as well as she wants it to. And then I also read Halfway Home by Hugh Howey, which I have a video out for that. I thought it was mostly boring. It had an interesting premise with interesting sci-fi elements that you could expand on and commentate about, and how he tries to do that. But I feel like it's left half there, and the fact that not a lot happens in the story in the middle part definitely drags it down. So not really worth pursuing. As for short stories, I read quite a few good ones, including 20 Hot Tips to Shopping Success by Casey Plett and Let's Tell This Story Properly by Jennifer McCombie. Both of them pretty excellent, both of them focusing on marginalized characters and just exploring more about that there. I also read A Good Man Is Hard to Find, probably the best short story of the month, of course, by Flannery O'Connor. Definitely worth pursuing, even though it has a pretty sad resolution. But I think Flannery O'Connor has a lot of interesting things to say about religion and how we practice religion and meaning and stuff like that. And then I also read Kabuliwala, or the Vendor or the Man from Kabul, which again, it was a lot of fun, but quite sad in its resolution. But still worth checking out. And then A Quiet Man by Maurice Walsh, which I thought was a lot of fun. Definitely a very interesting Irish Western sort of story, and the sort of twist or non-twist that happens later in the short story is a lot of fun to discover and made me laugh a bit. So quite a good short story. And then I read a number of poems as well for the month of November, which I made sure to focus on Asian writers a little bit, because I typically gloss over Asian writers for one reason or another, but I'm happy that I was able to check out a few of those. So go check out my Poetry Thursday videos for more information about that. What do I have planned for the month of December? Well, for my TBR in terms of books, I have a number of interesting ideas. I do want to get to Swamp Thing Volume 4, which is part of the Lucas BookTube challenge that I have going on. Can't wait to see what Alan Moore does to amaze me there. I also want to read, and this is the book that I was talking about where it felt like I was playing a little joke on myself. It is Teen Idol by Meg Cabot. I managed to get that from my local Goodwill, and I figured, it was for $1, so it's probably worth her writing. But again, I've been checking out a lot of Meg Cabot and complaining about her too, which is always fun. So I just want to see if she's outside of the Princess Diaries series, she's managed to improve her writing or offer something better to her teenage readers. And then related to that, I also found Charlotte's Web at the same Goodwill by E.B. White. Very much looking forward to reading that. And The Big Friendly Giant by Roald Dahl. Looking forward to returning to some Roald Dahl there. If you read any of those before, let me know in the comments and tell me what I have to look forward to. And then I also want to check out White Rage by Carol Anderson. That was recommended to me by Bevan over at not over anywhere, just on our Google Drive list. Sort of about white supremacy and anger towards people protesting for equal civil rights. Should be interesting to read. And related to that is another book that Bevan recommended for the month of December, specifically one about social services and the foster care system, which is a big focus for her. And I'm looking forward to reading that as well. And then a bunch of library reads that I find in my local library. As per usual, it's sometimes you get a stinker, sometimes you find something really interesting. So I'm looking forward to see what December has in store for me. As for short stories, I have one by Lucy Corrin planned, as well as another one. I wanted something Christmassy, and I stumbled across the Brothers Grimm, who are very familiar fairy tale writers. I probably won't have a very long video because the Brothers Grimm didn't exactly write, essays. They wrote very short stories for children, but it's still important to talk about the Brothers Grimm, especially their cultural impact. So that's going to be a fun video that I make, and a fun story to read as well. And then I also have a number of poems planned. I'm trying to do some holiday themed poems, especially Hanukkah or maybe Kwanzaa. Don't know how many Kwanzaa poems exist out there, but there are a number of Hanukkah poems, or at least poems that capture the spirit of Hanukkah that are worth talking about. So be on the lookout for that as well. Anyway, that is my wrap up for November and my TBR for December. It's been a high quality year of good reads, and especially stuff that like knocked me on my butt, so to speak, and some that just made me angry and some that made me happy. So I'm really looking forward to what 2023 brings. Trying to read more Penguin classics, just more classics in general. But I'll talk more about that in my my 2023 TBR video. If you have anything to recommend to me, let me know in the comments below. I'm always willing to hear what other people think might be of interest. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this fascinating channel. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and December-y travels. Farewell.